Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
Hello, my name is Max, and I would describe my mental health journey as incomplete.
Hello, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. I am your host, Matthew Yonemura. Thank you to everyone that I'm sure was eagerly awaiting our episode because we took 2 weeks in between our last episode because of Ripple Effect, our walk for suicide prevention. I did want to discuss that a little bit before I introduce our guest today and get to the interview because, I don't mean to say this in a way that's only complimentary to like Changing Tides, but I really truly loved that event. We put in so much work into it to make sure that we did our best to honor the families that we honored at the walk for suicide prevention. And, considering this was our first year doing it and the feedback that we've received and the environment that we created, and I'm not just saying like the environment we created from my perspective, but I'm saying from the perspective of our guests and the people that said that they enjoyed it as much as they did. I think it's something that we are all very proud of because it's been nothing but positive feedback so far. We might hear some negative feedback on the way, which honestly is welcomed because we need to see how we could improve this event in the future. But we're just immensely proud of what we were able to do. So our walk for suicide prevention, all the proceeds are going towards mental health outreach, our mental health programs such as CT Stream, our therapy stipend program, and also establishing suicide prevention resources that we plan to share once we get the groundwork all started. We couldn't really get the groundwork started until we had the funds in place. Now that we have the funds in place, we're able to kind of get that started. So, with that said, funds in place, when we first created this event, our goal was $30,000 in fundraising. And we said it would be great if 100 people came out. Today, as I'm recording this, today is Thursday, July 21st when I'm recording, we're up to $107,000 in fundraising, with donations actually still coming in, which is pretty unbelievable. So we're very grateful for the support we've gotten. We hope to continue to support the AAPI community and mental health in numerous ways. And I think this was a really great addition to the events that we put on and the programs that we are able to establish. So with that said, one of our amazing volunteers that helped make this event as big of a hit as it was, and really our volunteers and our vendors and everyone who came are what made this event special. But one of our volunteers is one of the original CT crew members, and he was in California for like a week, and he used that time to help out with Ripple Effect. So I'm excited to share the interview with the person who volunteered, and this person was also an original CT crew member, and that guest is Max Kaito. Hello, Max. Thank you for joining the podcast. I know we just were in person in Long Beach for Ripple Effect, but now you are all the way back in Florida for school, which is so exciting for you. I'm sure you are so happy to be back there and not in California, but I would love to hear why you describe your mental health journey as incomplete, which is something that we haven't heard yet.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yes, I think I would describe my journey as incomplete because I feel as though I haven't completely resolved everything that needs resolution. Maybe that's something that's similar for most other people who have some sort of mental health issues that they need to address. But I think one thing that I know I need to do that I definitely have not done nearly as much is see a therapist. I feel like that's something that I continuously advocate for and probably should be doing given the nature of my involvement with Changing Tides and I guess how much of a proponent I am for destigmatizing mental health. I think that's something that I'm kind of that I kind of need to work on a lot more. So I think that's why I would say incomplete.
I'm totally alongside with you on that. I think no one's journey is ever complete because we're always working on ourselves. And I'll be honest too, I'm not in therapy right now either. We launched CT Stream, our therapy stipend program. We've done this super extensive therapist directory on our website, and I'm reading all of them because I'm inputting the data. But I still haven't sought out therapy either. So I hear you. I think you can be a proponent of it while maybe not even being in it. But I think we'll both get there because neither of our journeys are complete, which is the great thing about it. But with all that said, I would love to hear, when you would say your mental health journey began, and this could even date back to even when you knew it was a quote unquote mental health journey.
Okay. Um, so I guess I'll start with what I think is like the impetus, like the what started it all, but I didn't recognize it as such at the time. So I guess as you know, um, my parents actually both passed from cancer within the same year when I was in middle school. And so I think both of those things happening at the same time, uh, at the time, I think everything was a blur. So both of my parents passed, and then we had to figure out stuff with moving to a different state because I was going to be living with my parents' friends in a different state. And that's why I lived in Arizona for a short period of time. And so all of that took place very quickly. And honestly, I don't remember very much of it. And so I think from there was kind of like go, go, go. And throughout all of high school, I tried to kind of maintain this, like the Asian, oh, you have to be like performing at a certain level, you have to be doing things that are productive. So you need to be like doing well in school, you need to be doing well in extracurricular activities, blah, 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 and then work your way towards college and so on and so forth. So I think all of that I took as a given, and I really didn't take any time to process what had happened to me at that time. And so I think throughout all of high school, I was, quote unquote, fine. I never felt as though there were any issues. And then I think in college, when I came back to UCLA for undergrad, some of that started weighing down on me. My grades started to drop. I had a job at the time, and there were days when I didn't show up to work, which was fairly unusual, I think, for the me I used to be, I guess. And then I was doing some volunteer stuff at a lab, and there were days when I would miss out on that without telling my supervisor, and that was unusual for me too. And so I think all of those events combined kind of led me to think, oh, what is wrong with me? And then fortunately, I think when it got bad enough to the point where I guess those phrases that you say were like, oh, kill me now, became a lot more like not serious, but more frequent. And I would say them in response to minor inconveniences. One of my friends actually asked me about that, and I think we had a really good talk. And it was like one of those times where I didn't even realize that I had an issue whatsoever, but just her spending the time to talk to me really helped me kind of unpack a little bit. and she offered to walk with me to our like counseling and therapy services on campus. And so I don't know, that I think that question was all I really needed to get me to go. And I think that kind of helped start me along the path of recognizing that I might have a problem and that I probably needed help.
Hmm. I'm wondering at what point along this journey, because for me in my mental health journey, I always described my depression as a funk. I didn't know what else to call it because I didn't know if what I was experiencing was a funk or I mean was depression. So I'm wondering, like, at what point it might have been when your friend walked to the UCLA services, or maybe even way after. When did you find the vocabulary to describe your journey or what you were feeling?
I still don't know if I have the right vocabulary to describe what I was feeling at the time. Um, I guess, I think, okay, the further that I go into medicine, because right now I'm in medical school, I think there are a lot of specific words that you can use when people meet specific criteria. And I feel like, um, I guess in certain regards, I probably do fit some of those. Like I could probably say at some point, maybe I had, like the DSM-5, which is like the, I don't know what it stands for, disorder of psychiatric conditions, essentially, booklet. I could probably say that at one point, maybe I did have major depressive disorder. I don't know if I still fit those criteria, but yeah, I mean, I think as someone who probably has not, well, I've only been to those few therapy sessions when I was at UCLA, and I haven't since then. So I feel like didn't, I didn't, I wasn't told the right vocabulary to refer to what I was feeling at that time. And so maybe that's another thing that I need to work on too.
Gotcha. No, I mean, again, as you said from the beginning, it's all incomplete, it's all continuous. So you might find it along the road, you might not. But, speaking of, the moving, the change of scenery, I'm wondering through all of this experience, like what was the importance of a support system, and how did you find a support system as you moved from place to place in different environments? Like, what role did that all play for you?
Um, so I think, well, when I recognized that I should probably be seeking help in college, I was fortunate enough to know some of those people who actually, the friend who talked to me, I would consider us very close, but we actually talked quite infrequently throughout
Hmm.
undergrad. And so it was really by like pure coincidence that she talked to me. Um, but I think it was one of those things where I feel like if I looked hard enough, there were a lot of people who were there to help support me. Um, and so fortunately, I felt, I guess, comfortable enough with my roommates at the time to kind of talk to them about that. I had like one-on-one discussions with all of them and told them what was going on, because I ended up actually taking a quarter off from a quarter off from school, just when I truly went to zero classes. Um, and they were really understanding. And I feel like my roommates are men or people of few words, but they were very helpful, just by like being there and listening to me. So I think I knew that if I needed anything, I could go to them. Um, and then also I think like shortly after college was actually when, Portland talked to me about changing tides and all of that stuff. And so I think I knew from that it was a lot easier to strike up conversations about mental health without there being any sort of barrier to entry. Um, and then I think, ever since my involvement with Changing Tides, people have been a lot more forthcoming about their mental health journeys, which makes it easier for me to talk about any issues that I might be having at that time. And I feel like it's really kind of like deepen the level of our conversations and like connectiveness that we've had with each other.
Gotcha. And so I want to talk about changing tides down the road.
Mhm.
But, I know like as you brought your sister to Ripple Effect, you dragged her to that event. She's been at a few of our different like CT cafes. She's been, she's participated with Changing Tides. So if you don't mind me asking, like what is your relationship with your sister like when it comes to mental health, having these open discussions, or is it kind of a difficult thing as it is family for you?
Um, so I think so we probably talk about, like, have like real talk, quote unquote real talk very infrequently. Um, but I don't think that's because it's necessarily difficult for us to initiate that conversation. I think when we have things to say, um, then we say it. Like I think I can pretty casually say like, oh yeah, I was depressed, or like, my sister will tell me things about her mental health, without much hesitation, I guess. Um, yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit easier for us to have those kinds of conversations with each other. Ever since our parents passed, we were kind of just like, all right, now it's us. So we kind of have to rely on each other. And so I think even though, I mean, now, my sister's in LA and I'm in Florida, we still talk to each other pretty frequently, even though it often comes in the form of us kind of like complaining about our days to one another, or like coworkers who may or may not be annoying, or classmates who may or may not be annoying. Sorry, I guess that it ends up being a lot of negative things, but I guess that's what we're the majority of the things that we talk about.
Gotcha. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad that you're still able to have those like real talk moments when you need it. Um, so you did mention changing tides coming into the picture. I guess I said we'll talk about it later, but we'll just talk about it now. So changing tides came into the picture for you after you left UCLA.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I believe so.
cool.
2018, I think.
Gotcha. So, walk me through the early days from your perspective of changing tides. I've talked to Ty, I've talked to Cortland, I've yet to talk to Taryn about it. But for you, getting changing tides off the ground, what pulled you in? What was your involvement? What were those early days like?
So I think at that time I was already done with college, and I was probably, yeah, I think I was working as a scribe in the ER, and I was only really focusing on like, oh, okay, I need to like get everything I need ready before I apply to medical school. Um, and then I think just because of being shortly out of college, a lot of our like college circle of people were still talking, and so I don't even remember how it came up, but Cortland talked to me, and she was like, hey, do you want to do this thing? We're planning an event, which ended up being the May event, which we still have yet to find a better name for, I guess. We're doing this thing, and do you want to help plan it? And she was like, oh yeah, Taryn's doing it, Ty's doing it. What do you say? And I was like, okay, alrighty, I'll be there. I feel like I didn't quite understand the like what exactly I was getting myself into at that time. Um, because it seemed like a yes, one and done type of commitment. Um, and I think we were all very happily surprised that it ended up being much more than we could have ever fathomed. Um, but yeah, at the beginning, I think I didn't really know what was going on, and it was really just like Cortland and everyone else who had been involved taking the reins, and I was just there, like putting my two thumbs up, saying, "Yep, I'll do what you need me to do."
Gotcha. No, that's so funny because well, first of all, you say that as if you weren't one of the original four people to do it. You're talking like you came in late, but you're literally one of the originals. But also, did you all get to know each other from NSU, or how did the four of you all?
Yeah. So my I think my sister and Taryn were so my sister also went to UCLA. She
Got
was
it.
4 years before me, so she left as I was coming into my freshman year. But she and Taryn were close while they were both going to UCLA at the same time. So I knew of her, and I think Taryn knew of me at that time too. And we became friends during the time we happened to both be going. And then Cortland and I are the same age, and so we went through a lot of NSU stuff together. And then Ty is, I think, a year or two younger than us. I don't remember. I don't like to think about age that much, but yes, Ty is younger, and he also became involved in the NSU circle. So we ended up all becoming friends because of
Cool.
that org.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So yes, we still just call it the May event. As of right now, we're calling it the November event because we did shift it to November. Where I
Amazing.
sometimes I'll just call it like the gala, but I don't know what else to call it. Yeah, we don't have a
Sure.
specific name yet. But you know, it's changed. The landscape has changed so much, and like from 2018 to now. Because what did you call the original event? It was Changing Tides, Open
Changing
Conversation.
tides. Yes.
I know
It,
it.
it
If
had
you want
open
help,
conversation in it. No, it definitely did. It was a long title though, I will say.
I
An
think it was
open
Open
conversation
Conversations,
on
Well-Being.
it's on multiple things. An open conversation on compassion and well-being. There we
Right.
go.
Okay. So we couldn't even call it mental health yet, right? We didn't call it a mental health event. It was Open
That's true.
Conversations. So yes, the landscape as a whole has changed, but do you see any specific ways in which your work with Changing Tides has impacted your mental health?
My mental health, yes, I would say so. I think by I I don't want to say I've been like pressured into um being more open about my mental health because that sounds kind of weird too. But I feel as though it has given me the space
Mm,
to become more comfortable with talking to other people about my mental health. Um, I mean, I think there were a lot of factors, obviously, um, in like being barred from talking about mental health. Like, obviously, in like Asian American cultures in general, there's the whole like, oh, don't burden other people with your problems, don't inconvenience others whenever possible, like keep private matters types of things. And I think that mentality has rung very true for a lot of us. Um, but being involved with Changing Tides, I think, made it has, I guess, helped me confront my own, I guess, biases against discussions about mental health. I think to a certain extent. I hope, I don't know, hopefully I'm not the only one, but I hope that like I'm not the only one who has like this internalized bias against talking about mental health. And I think that's kind of what we're all trying to overcome. Um, and so I think like slowly but surely it's being chiseled away at. Um, and yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is being comfortable having these discussions with more people and actually, I don't know, feeling like I have closer friendships with people with whom I can have these discussions.
We're taking a quick break to introduce Anchor, the sponsor of this podcast. Anchor is free, first and foremost, which is amazing. Who doesn't love free? And you can record everything directly into Anchor. It's so easy to use Anchor. That's how you are listening to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, the Anchor website. You're listening to it because I uploaded this podcast episode to Anchor. If you want to start your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's made this whole process so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I think you have an interesting perspective on this because so you remind me when you started back at med school in Florida.
I started July 2020.
So 2018, fresh out of college, you experienced college life pre this mental health awakening kind of that we've had.
Mhm.
And you started with Changing Tides in 2018 as well. So that's like the very early stages of discussing mental health. You in the middle, you were working, you weren't in school yet, but now you're back 2020, back in college.
Mhm.
You've worked, and we're kind of in this very open space about mental health, or at least the landscape has changed substantially.
Mhm.
From 2018 to now, whether it be work, social life, or school, how have you seen the difference in mental health in those three sectors?
Um, I guess, well, work is kind of weird because I didn't feel as though changing tides really affected the way that I work
Hmm.
necessarily, or my workplace for that matter, because it wasn't very, I guess, Asian American
Hmm.
in general, and I was kind of just at a hospital. So I would say not much in that sphere. Um, Social life, I would say significantly. Um, but I also think there are a lot of factors there. It was probably because like I was going to be moving across the country for one, and I was going to be starting school. And so like a lot of people were kind of aware that we wouldn't be in touch as frequently. Um, and so I think it's kind of like those, oh, like when you know you're losing someone, you talk to them more kind of things.
Hmm.
Not to say that I was dying, but you know, it's kind of what it felt like if I'm being shipped off to Florida. um, but I think a lot of people, um, a lot of my friends and I think we made sure that we talk more specifically because I was gonna be leaving. So I guess in that way, it kind of helped. Um, and we became a lot more open with each other despite the distance.
Hmm.
Um, and then school, I guess. Well, school's kind of weird too because like now, I mean, during, I guess we're still like kind of in COVID,
Right.
but post COVID, um, I think during this entire pandemic, there has been a big discussion about mental health. So I think, as we've mentioned before, like I think all of us say that Changing Tides, like we started stuff at a good time, um, at a time when it was very well needed. And I think during the pandemic was specifically when we were doing what, like the CT cafes.
Right.
And I think, you know, those were also a good thing to be doing at that time. And so I can't say that like the Changing Tide specifically made a difference in like the way that I approached school per
Hmm.
se, um, but I think, you know, compounding the effects of like changing tides and like the kind of global discussion about mental health during the pandemic, I think all of those things helped at least like me and a lot of my classmates and even faculty members kind of be a lot more open about these things. And yeah.
Yeah. No, so that leads me exactly into where I wanted to take this conversation is you are in Florida for med school. That's why you were shipped off across the country. But, this isn't necessarily, psychology. It's not you're not training to become a therapist or a mental health professional. But I know from when you're in our group texts when it's like 11 p.m. our time, it's like 2 a.m. your time, and you're still responding every now and then. It's a grind. I know it's a grind for you, and it's no easy schooling. But I'm curious, does your program address mental health from the perspective of students, and also as you're getting your degree, like do your lesson plans include discussions about mental health?
um I guess the short answer to that is probably yes, and I would say probably more so than some other medical
Hmm.
schools. um our student affairs department is actually that, well, I say department, but it's really kind of like run by one person. She is a very strong proponent of like wellness. And so she makes it a point to, like, if necessary, she will like text us and be like, hey, how are you doing?
Hmm.
um, I remember specifically there was a time when all of us had to meet with her before we take our board exams, because the board exams, like we can take, or we study for kind of independently. And she met with me individually in her office, and she was like, okay, so it sounds like you have a plan for studying for your exam. You would tell me if you had any issues, right? And I was like, I think I hesitated for a second, because in my head, it was like, no, why would you about this? Which was, a bad way of thinking. And she was like, you would tell me, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I would tell you. So I almost felt threatened by her concern for me. So yeah, I guess in essence, yes, I would say we do have discussions about wellness, probably more wellness than mental health per se. But we actually have had some like mandatory sessions that we have to attend where we talk about what we need to do in order to kind of maintain our sanity while going through med school, which is becoming an increasingly important concern.
Right. No, and I mean, like, if you just look around, I mean, you could scroll on social media even to this day where we're not necessarily in the peak of COVID, and it's about, nurses or doctors and the stresses of the work environment. And, you know, I'm wondering also, in this program, do you have to be taught anything about like patient mental health or, like the people you're treating?
Um, so I think we kind of get all of the information we need about patient care in like little segments at a time. And so I think we probably got the most about, how to deal with patients who might be having mental health issues during our, like we call it our BBB block, which is like brain, body, and behavior.
Hmm.
So it's essentially like neurological concerns and
Okay.
psychological concerns. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, during that point is when we do things that are probably a little bit more within the realm of like psychiatry. So like, they walked us through specific like depression screenings, and like the types of things that we're supposed to be keeping an eye out for if we hear patients talk about them. And this is like, things that apply to patients who might come in for like, you know, a broken bone in their arm or something. But if they say something about like, oh yeah, I have some problems at home, or, if you happen to see something that might suggest they might be inflicting self-harm, obviously those become relevant in those situations. And so I think, yeah, we get it like in the right context. It's kind of hard to put it all together, probably because we haven't had very much time when we're in the hospital and seeing real patients. But I assume that'll happen more and more when we get into like our mandatory psychiatry rotation, which I haven't
Gotcha.
had yet, but I think some of my peers have.
Got it. So your sister is also a nurse or a doctor?
She's a nurse.
Okay,
Mhm.
so your sister's a nurse. You're trying to
Mhm.
become a doctor, or you
Mhm.
will become a doctor. Not trying,
Trying
you
to. Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Trying to is right.
Yeah, I mean, hey, whatever you've told us about the exams you've taken, it's gone well so far, right?
I've passed. I've passed.
Yes, exactly. So they've gone well so far. You're going to become one, but you and your sister are both a nurse and a doctor soon. Soon.
Mhm.
What is there anything from your experiences that drove both of you to this field, or was it a natural, like just like inclination that the medical field was better for you, or is there something that drove you both to this field?
Um, I can't really say about my sister's experiences. The only thing I can say about her is, and I'm gonna out her a little bit on her weird choices throughout college. She was an anthropology major, which
I love
like,
that story.
I mean,
Yes, got
yeah,
one.
yep, nice.
Thank you, thank you.
She was an anthropology major. Not to say that, anthropology is not an important and valuable area of study, but I don't know what she was planning on doing with it with an anthropology degree. but I think she was already committed at that time because it was maybe her third or fourth year when she recognized maybe like a slight interest in nursing.
Huh.
And it was kind of too late for her to switch her degree and also graduate. So she finished her degree at that point, and then she was like, okay, I'm going to be a nurse. So she started taking a bunch of classes outside of, or like at, community college classes while she was working in order to work her way towards her nursing degree.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe there were pre-nursing classes in order to apply to nursing school. That's what it was.
Got it.
But yeah, I guess I never really asked her specifically about her motivations, but I would assume, given that we've had similar life experiences, that it probably stems from the fact that, well, like one, we're both kind of nerds, and then two, our parents both passed from cancer. And I mean, that's probably like a common story, honestly. Like, I would bet if I talked to, the 49 other peers I have in my medical program and asked them, like, what drove you to medicine, I would bet more than 75% of them would say that they had some, personally, they had some sort of medical condition, or, like medical story, or, a family member was affected. So I wouldn't say it's uncommon by any means, but I would bet it's probably something like that.
Mm. No, I mean, I think that's, in its own way, it's kind of a beautiful thing to turn it into a motivation. Um, Not to say like, yeah, I think it's a great way that you're able to turn it around into a motivation for you. Um, but I'm wondering if you have advice. If anyone is also interested in the medical field that's listening, is there any advice you would give to students in their first year of medical school?
Oh, if they're already in their first year.
Okay,
Um,
let's go back. Let's go
okay.
back. Decide if someone wants to pursue the medical field. Let's start there. What advice would you give to that person?
Okay. I think my advice for people who are thinking about medicine as a career is to find people who are already doctors, or just healthcare professionals in general. And then, I mean, this is like the cliche answer that, anyone will probably give you, but I think it rings true, is like, try to shadow and like see as many of these people at work, and I guess outside of work, as much as possible. At work, because you want to know what you're getting yourself into, especially if you're going to try to be a doctor, a medical doctor. That's a long commitment. It's 4 years of medical school plus a 3 to 5 year residency. So that's a lot of years of not really making money and actually actively pushing yourself further into debt. So you have to, really think about whether this is for you, because
Mm.
it's not really like, if you're trying to make money, there are better ways to do it. I think there needs to be some level of intrinsic motivation to get you through like potentially 8 years of hardship. um, and then I would also say, yeah, so like talking to people and seeing how they are outside of work, because regardless of whether they enjoy their work, if they aren't also enjoying their time outside of work, that could be an issue too. Or if they're just like constantly complaining about work during the time that they're not at work, that's just like, well, that they're taking their work home with them, and
Mm.
that's not great either. Maybe it's, personality dependent, and some people are a lot better about compartmentalizing, like, work is work, and my social life is my social life. But I think if you see that a lot of people, or if you see a lot of people like that, who are similar to the way that you are in, personality and such, then maybe that should be a hint to you that, like, oh, this might not be the best for me from like a mental health standpoint. Like, I might
Right.
not make it, which isn't to say like, I'm not trying to make it like a willpower type of thing, like oh, you, like, only the strong will survive. It's really just like sometimes it's not like a good match for
Right.
you, and that's okay.
Yeah. Um, so what is the advice then for people who either barely made it through their first year, or they made it through their first year just fine, but they did their first year of medical school. They have more to go, as you said. What advice do you give to that person?
I think I think like really have some discussions with the people around you, whether they're like a wide variety of people who are around you. If you're in the medical program, or if you're in a medical program already, then there should be faculty members who are doctors already. If there's someone that this person who's having this dilemma has a strong relationship with, probably talk to that medical doctor who's on the faculty, and have an honest conversation about whether like this is something that's sustainable. Um, and then maybe like someone who's maybe not from the medical side, to kind of focus in on like what other ramifications it might have, like whether that be like financial, like moving back home, what that would look like, other things having to do with family or friends in that area, and then probably other students in that program. And I think like getting a variety of those kinds of perspectives will probably help to make a better decision. Because I mean, I would not make a decision about dropping out of medical school. Right? Sorry, dropping out has a negative connotation. About leaving, discontinuing. I don't know. I don't know what the right terminology is, but yeah, walking away from medical school, like even a year in, because that's just so like even before that first year, there's so much effort, kind of, I think, that goes into applying, and like kind of perfecting your medical school application before you get in. So that's a big decision to make without the input of many knowledgeable and trusted people. Um, I know some, like there are a couple of classmates I had, who were very smart.
Mm,
I thought from the get-go, wow, this person would make an amazing physician. There's no doubt in my mind that if someone came up to me and wanted a like pediatrician, which I thought was what this person was going to become, I would refer them to this person immediately. Um, but she chose to not do it because she knew after the first year, this is
mm,
not for me. And so she decided to go a completely different, well, not completely different direction, but she decided to pursue public health,
mm.
which is, that's great that she's still using her, like everything that she's worked for, from like a different perspective. And I think that was like a wise decision for her to come to after her first year, because it could
Right.
have been after her second or third year, or maybe even after getting her medical degree when
Yeah.
she's in a lot more debt.
Right.
So I think it's a tough decision, but one that requires a lot of contemplating and yeah.
Gotcha. Well, you're still here. You're still going through the school. So it sounds like, despite the grind, it's where you belong. And I'm sorry to ask about more and more advice, but I am curious what advice you would have given to yourself in that time of it being, as you mentioned, a whirlwind of everything kind of just moving so fast, of all this change. At any point, what advice would you, Max, today have given yourself during that tumultuous time of change?
Um, I think, I mean, the most important thing probably would have been to, one, I guess, stay more connected with my friends I was moving away from at that time. Um, and then two, if there was a way for me to try to figure out how to like start going to therapy at that time, I think that probably would have helped a little bit, with like what felt like kind of an acute exacerbation is not the best word, because that sounds a lot more medical, but I feel like the depression hit me all at once when I got to
Mm,
college, and I was a little bit more, I guess, aware of my emotions. Um, I think, yeah, it hit me all at once when I was in college. And I feel like if I had begun to unpack and discuss and like, find the right vocabulary to discuss my mental health earlier on. Or even like recognize that, the death of both parents is something that may potentially be traumatic to you later in life. And like isn't something that you can just power your way through. I think if someone, I guess me, if future me had been there to tell past me that in youth, then maybe that would have helped me get to therapy and then helped me later in life.
I think that's great advice to your former self. And I do have some silly quick fire questions, but before that, is there anything that I missed in your mental health journey or your school journey that I didn't mention or you didn't get a chance to mention?
I don't think so. I feel like I've been talking forever. I'm sorry.
No, it's you haven't been. I have enjoyed listening to it because I didn't know, as we mentioned, I kind of just found out more about your mental health journey as we were discussing having you on the podcast. So for me, I love to hear about it, and I'm sure for the long time Changing Tides supporters, they'll be happy to hear from you, and same with newcomers as well. So with that, I think the most fun is hearing these quick fire questions. And I would love to start by asking, what is a skill that you do not have but wish you do have?
Skill I don't have but wish I had. Okay, I think so. It would be really cool. I think if I had perfect pitch. I'm not like a musical, like, but it would be really cool if I could hear pitches and just be like, ah, yes, that must be an A flat or whatever. If that's even a note, that probably is. I don't know, but I think that would be really cool and maybe potentially useless, but I don't know, maybe one day I'll become like one of those spies who can like figure out the, like passwords and pins to things based off of like, because those have different pitches, right? Not to say that I'm trying to steal people's pins, but, it'd be a cool option to have.
Okay, sure, Max. This is the one I'm most excited for. What is your favorite part about Florida? If anyone's only listening,
okay.
if anyone's only listening, Max just made the funniest face when I asked that question. I can't even describe it, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, I do have an answer for this, and I think my answer is watching iguanas run. I don't know if anyone has ever seen an iguana run, but it is the funniest thing because I mean they're pretty big, long, like green, creatures, but like when they're kind of dumb. They're kind of dumb. And when they're in the middle of the street and they see a car coming, sometimes they'll like waddle along really slowly. But some of them that are probably a little bit smarter will get on their hind two legs and kind of like run like this. I mean, obviously, people who are listening cannot see what I'm doing, but I think it's worth watching a video. It's very enjoyable.
Okay. So if you're not listening to this on YouTube, you must go immediately to our YouTube channel to watch this, or just Google iguanas running because I'm curious now. So thank you for that, Max. A new curiosity has been sparked.
Excellent.
So it may not be Florida, but what is your favorite place to travel?
Favorite place to travel? I guess. You know what? I want to go back to Prague.
Huh.
I know that's like a weird, like kind of out of the thin air type of answer, but man, they have really good food there. Like
I
it's
don't
really
think that's a weird
hearty
answer.
and it's all about like bread, meat, like potatoes. And you probably gain like a solid 20 pounds if you spend any more than like a couple days there. But man, it is
Worth
so
it.
good.
I'm sure it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not a. I actually don't think that's a weird answer. I feel like Prague is a destination. I mean, you went there. It
Yeah,
must be a
yeah.
destination.
It was a destination. I was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I forgot to ask this to Ty and Court. I think I forgot to ask them. But when you were on the CT crew,
Mhm.
you were all the captains of something.
Oh, yes.
So please explain why it was captains and what you were the captain of.
Um, okay, so I think the captain thing might have been something that we discussed at yet another quite long meeting because we had a lot of really long meetings that were kind of impromptu. We didn't recognize that we were having a meeting until we were, 2 hours in. But I think ultimately we decided that we wanted to stick with the nautical theme because it's really cool. Um,
I agree. I
yeah,
love keeping the nautical theme going.
right?
Oh, my dog is going crazy, but continue.
So I think that the nautical theme is why we decided instead of having things like, director or like, I don't know what other things, I don't know, vice, oh yeah, like president, I guess, whatever. We decided to go with captain. And we even try to think of an entire infrastructure for like our potential organization with like captains and fleets and like first mate and, like helmsman, all of those things. I don't think all of those things quite came to fruition, but we stuck with the captain idea for a little bit. I was, uh, I think I was the captain of communications. At least that was part of my title, um, and I think it was because that was a more neutral way of saying that I am the captain of grammar and spelling, because that's essentially what my role was for a while. Because as you know, Changing Tides is quite artsy and like musical, and like everyone else in who was involved, even tangentially in our organization, has some sort of like, oh, they can draw, they can paint, they can do pointillism, or like, they can sing,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is. And I have none of those skills. So my contribution was if we needed to send out like formal emails to people, I would read over those emails and I would make sure that the grammar and spelling was right, like make sure that commas were in places they needed to be.
Hmm.
Um, and that was the only thing I really did.
So I have a bonus question I just thought of because you were the captain of communications. Okay, so Margaret Shimada and I, we have not a debate, but she has brought to my attention that I say, thank you for helping us change the tides. But she believes it is thank you for helping us change the tide. Do you have a take on this?
This sounds like a semantics question rather than
Okay.
like one on grammar.
Okay.
So I feel like either one is probably grammatically correct.
Okay.
I guess, however, my stance would be I think thank you for helping us change the tide singular, I think sounds better
Okay.
because I don't know, change the tides sounds more tumultuous and like
That's fair.
there's so many things going on, but it sounds like you can do one. I don't know. It makes it sound like you're powerless. There are multiple tides.
That's fair. Okay, starting with this episode, I close it all every episode by saying thank you for helping us change the tides. This episode on, it is change the tide. Okay? So from now on,
I
I
feel
will fix that.
wow. I think you're giving me too much, like giving my opinion a little too much weight.
It's okay. We're here now. If it's you and Margaret, then I think you both must be correct. So I'll let Margaret know that I have converted. I'll be on her side from now on.
Fair enough.
If you could invite 5 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be?
These are to the same dinner.
Yeah, all together.
See, okay, I think that's a weird because that's so
Oh
many
goodness.
people, so many like new people that I could potentially be bringing to one single table. Like, what if they hate each other?
That's fine. That's fun. It's just one dinner. It's not a book club. You don't have to see each other every week.
Gosh, that'd be so weird. Um, it would be cool to talk to Zach Levi.
Okay.
I don't know if you know who that is, but
Nope. But continue.
okay. Uh, He's Shazam, if that helps.
Oh, right. Got it. Okay.
And Tangled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I guess Michael Bublé. It'd be nice to have a little dinner music, you know?
Nice.
Gosh, so many people. I don't
There
know,
are a
and
lot of
like three of
people.
my friends or something. They can be here at this concert. I have friends who
Okay.
like those people.
You guys and Zach, who is it, Levi?
Yeah,
Yeah. You're all just, it's just you, your friends, and Zach Levi happens to be at the same concert. That's fun. I'm with
yeah,
it. Okay,
sure.
cool. To round it out, what would the title of your autobiography be?
My autobiography would be Max Kaito, colon. I hope you don't regret reading this.
All right. Well, that prepares someone for any case it could that book could take you. So, I appreciate that, Max. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you helping out at Ripple Effect for the like 1 week you were in California. I appreciate you taking the time. But yes, thank you so much for being on the podcast, sir.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me and doing this.
Thank you again to Max for coming on the podcast and sharing about his mental health journey. Uh, I find Max to be an inspirational figure. I think his perseverance and his pursuit for the medical field is one to admire. So thank you again, Max. But if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you could subscribe to our show. Our episodes release on every other Tuesday, and you can give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to support our show to help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of this episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or check out our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tide on mental health.